So, Policy Committee on today's date, Thursday, February 27th, 2025. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jack Kaufman. I'm Clark County Commissioner in beautiful Southern Indiana. Thanks to the bridge, it's pretty quick to get here now. So anyway, I also serve on the KIPTA Board of Directors also. So look forward to working with everyone on the Transportation Policy Committee, and we'll go ahead and proceed on with our business then, okay? So first thing is the TPC minutes from the January.
Can we do a roll call first?
Oh, yes, let's do roll call.
Do roll call first. Bullitt County. I think they said they'd have to miss today. City of Charlestown. Here. Yep. City of Jeffersontown.
Here.
Matt. City of Jeffersonville. City of New Albany. City of Shively. City of St. Matthews. Here. I think I saw Bernie online. So
He was up there,
well, double St. Matthews there. Clark County.
Here, present.
Double Clark County. Can't beat that. Floyd County. NDOT.
Kathy McCallup's here.
Kathy. NDOT Seymour.
Tony McClellan.
See you, Tony. Hi, Tony. I think I saw Julie as well. So thank you
Yes,
for
I'm
joining.
here.
Jefferson County League of Cities. Sure. Thank you. Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
How old is your boss?
Thank you, Tom.
Tracy
Louisville
Lovell,
Metro Government. Oh, Tracy Level's here too. Thank you for joining us, Tracy. Louisville Metro.
Present.
Thank you. Twice.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Where am I? Louisville Regional Airport Authority. More on them in a little bit. Oldham County. Jim Sullivan. Good afternoon, Jim. Town of Clarksville.
Present.
Hi, Kevin. Tark.
Here.
How are you doing? Our advisory members today, if you're an advisory member, KYC District 5's here, in the form of Tom and Tracy. Brian's here from Planning and Design. Let's see, did I see Federal Highways? I think I saw Lakeisha. Hi, Lakeisha, we see you. Lakeisha's from Federal Highways, Indiana. Bernie's on there, as we were talking about before, and if we have anybody else show up, we'll do our best to acknowledge them here at the end of the meeting. So, we certainly do have forum. Thank you all for your attendance. Good attendance today.
Thank you. And thank you all very much. And I also too want to welcome those that are online. Glad to have you here with us. And if you came in a little bit late, I am Jack Kaufman. I'm a Clark County Commissioner. And I have the privilege of serving as your chairperson for this year. So we'll go ahead and proceed on then. With the approval of the meeting minutes for January 2025. Everyone have a chance to take a look at that. And I'd like to go ahead and entertain a motion on those minutes.
Motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for the approval of the January 2025 meeting minutes. Any questions or discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I abstained since I wasn't at the last meeting.
Good.
Thank you. Next up, we have public comment period. We have any
Yes.
public comments?
We do. We had about 3 arrived before the meeting, so I'll read those out. They're all from the same person. First one says, get to ID 2979. While I appreciate the creation of a shared use path to allow children, people walking and biking the ability to move between 42 and Prospect and the bridge, this route will be mostly used for recreational only. It would be more impactful to create the same shared use path for 9 million along 42 itself through Prospect in front of businesses, shopping centers, and neighborhoods where there is currently a few sidewalks and only fast moving car traffic allowed in 4 to 5 driving lanes. This is part of the Louisville Loop. What are people supposed to do once they reach 42? Second comment is about KIPTA ID 1922. So this project has grown by 60% in cost from 68 to 108 million. That is the largest project in this TPC, and it is just for 1.5 miles of expressway widening. This large amount of funding could be used better elsewhere. Maybe the scope of this could be decreased to save tax money. And the final one is about the downtown transit center for TARC planning study. Those were changes coming to the TARC system, which increase bus frequency downtown and encourage bus transfers. A Louisville downtown transit center is a welcome and needed project that can reduce car congestion, road wear, and maintenance costs, and increase safety by allowing more people to take a bus instead of driving. All three of those comments came from Michael Schneider. And I don't see anything in the Q&A, so I believe that is all the public comments for right now. If anything comes up, I'll bring up another business.
Well, thank you for presenting those public comments, Greg. We appreciate it very much. And thank those who did participate in public comments. Next up is the public involvement report.
Yes. So, good afternoon, everybody. Go through the month of January's outreach. It was a really busy month. We'll get right into it. First off is our website analytics. For January, we saw all our numbers go up for all three of our pages, which is really good. Main page saw 181 visitors. Our transportation improvement program page saw 148. And our MTP page saw 71 visitors. Social media, really good numbers out of Facebook. That was helped largely by 2 posts that we did, just paid advertising for Amendment 8, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. 10 posts total for the month of January, 19,000 impressions, 134 engagements. Instagram stayed pretty strong. Did see a little bit of a drop, but still good numbers. 9 posts, 531 impressions, 38 engagements. And our Twitter page did get back cut in half compared to last month, but still good numbers. 1.5 thousand people organic posts for the Amendment 8, as well as good numbers for our outreach when we did the press release for the Reconnecting Communities grant. All right, as I said, Amendment 8, we had the public comment opportunity. That comment window was open from January 28th through February 11th. Chris is going to talk about that here just a little bit more in detail, but I'll give the outreach and the feedback that we got. Collected 166 comments. Only 15 of the 69 projects did not receive a comment. Ratio wise, that's really good. Typically what we see is we have about 3 or 4 projects that get the majority of the comments. This one was spread out. I will take note though, that we believe just due to the size of this was 69 projects that we had mapped out. We didn't have the like feature available this time, what we normally do. GIS tried to fiddle with it, tried to fix it, but did not want to mess with it too bad. So we just left it be for this one. We think maybe that helped a little bit with more people getting in the comments because they couldn't like the projects specifically. So they provided feedback that way. So that was one good thing. We held a virtual public meeting on February 4th. And we did, as I mentioned, paid advertising, 11.1 thousand impressions in paid advertising. MailChimp, our email campaigns were really successful. I really want to focus on the link clicks. That's the biggest thing here. 617 link clicks for the one, 340 for the second one. Typically, we're looking at about 1 to 200 link clicks on those. So the fact that those were doubled and tripled in some cases, that's really good news. That means people were at least going to the websites, probably returning back and forth a little bit, but really good news to see that. Okay, what did we hear? The Belvedere Transformation Project was the most commented on. It had 10 total comments. All opposed to the project. Wasn't too surprised to see that many comments. WDRB did an article and actually linked our amendment page in that article. So it was actually thought we would get more comments. We did get 10 out of that. Our 4th Street redesign project and the Ohio River bike ped connection was the second most commented with 8. Show you a couple of just the little themes that came from those projects itself. Most people were very much in favor of the Ohio River bike ped. The theme there was sounding success. Great news to see this project here. Slam dunk, great idea. The 4th Street redesign was also very popular, but it's this was also very similar. They talked about maybe making it more bike and car centric versus car centric. Or bike and pedestrian centric versus car centric for the folks in that area, than downtown Fourth Street. So this is, we'll take a little bit of an explanation. We did 2 social media posts about the amendment, and we received a ton of comments on one. I think we had like 49 comments on one. We had 15 on the second one, but how none of them were relevant to Amendment 8. So I included them in the outreach report. They're in the packet. They'll also be on the website. This is probably a good time to remind everybody, we do an outreach report each month. And I place it in the TPC webpage where the meeting information is. So everybody can go through, if anybody in the committee wants to go back and look at those. They were not included in the collection of comments that were sent to you all a couple of weeks ago. But since they are social media comments, they're considered public. They are readily available for everybody. So we essentially just had 2 or 3. I've got a few of them here. One that did come up is that they talked about, they kind of complaining about the deadline and the timeline of this being 15 days not enough. We did respond back to that, just explaining our place on that. You can see our response there in the bottom right. And finally, we were in the news a lot, so I don't know if a lot of people's up, but the Reconnecting Communities grant, we did a press release in January and that got a ton of attention. I did interviews with WDRB, WLKY, and WHAS. So it was really fun. Probably the most interviews I've done for one story in my time here. It got a lot of attention, and I really appreciate Tom and KYTC giving all that information in the meeting before, so I was able to provide that out to the media when they were asking questions. So that wraps up my report. Anybody's got questions, I will take them.
I have questions. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Great, appreciate your report. Next item we have is the public involvement report. That's basically,
That was just that.
that was just checking. I just forgot to put check it out. Okay. Next item number 5 is the TTCC Officers Committee nomination. And, do you have any discussion? Andy, do you have anything?
Yes, yeah, so, at our meeting earlier this month, the TTCC, approved, voted on officers for this, for calendar year 2025. And so those officers, that slate of officers is in need of ratification by this body. So our the person that was, voted on to be our TTCC chair for this year is Aida Coker from TARC. And the 2025 vice chair of TTCC will be Jim Silliman of Oldham County. So as I said, those officers are in need of ratification per the bylaws by this body here today. Happy to answer any questions, and Aida or Jim, if there's more you want to say.
Any comments? Not everybody has to agree.
Right.
It's open forum, but I appreciate the opportunity to start.
So we look forward to it. It is in need of an action.
Okay, so we need a motion then to ratify that slate of officers for the TTCC officers for the upcoming 2025 years. So I need a motion to ratify the appointment of those officers.
Motion.
Motion, we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Congratulations, y'all. We appreciate your service. Next is item number 6. And this is your draft for the fiscal year 26 Unified Planning Work Program. And we'll discuss that, and Andy will be presenting.
Yes, sir. Got a few slides as I typically do this time of year, and I apologize that this one was not available to you all sooner, so we can talk about what that means at the end. So I'm here today to talk about our Unified Planning Work Program for the fiscal 2026. That's due to next slide, please. That's due to our state and federal planning partners. The draft is due by the end of the month. And the way this works is that There's a 30 to 60-day review period by all parties and gets finalized, or it'll be approved officially by this body, the final version that is at our April meetings. So again, it's our statement of work that talks about what we do. Next slide, please. Where we get our money from, what are all the activities for the upcoming year, what it costs. It has kind of our primary work elements. You know, that's the staff time, that's the purchases of certain data products, we talk about streetlights sometimes. It also includes our rideshare program, some of the planning studies, more on that in a minute. Some of the planning studies where we farm out some of the money that we get from the feds for your all's local communities to do some planning studies. And it's also, in the last few years, more important than ever to include any discretionary grants that we know about. Here's the schedule. I'm bringing the draft to you today. It's due tomorrow. We'll have a couple months to review it individually and collectively. Board approval will be scheduled. TPC and board approval will be scheduled for April 24th, and then again it's due to the states and feds by the end of April. Next slide, please. Here's some of the highlights. How's it changed from last year? These things don't change very much. They don't change very often, I guess I should say. This year there are some changes that I thought were worth pointing out. Our Kentucky PL funds are metropolitan planning funds. Those are the federal funds that are administered through Federal Highways Administration, through KYTC, and through NDOT. Okay, so each state DOT administers them in their respective states. We did get an increase this year of about 2% or 29,000. That is the largest pot of money that we receive for the MPO. That number, if you're wondering, is up from 1.39 million to about 1.7 million, somewhere in that range. So they gave us a nice little boost this year. More importantly is that second bullet point. Another change that was made by KYTC was very generous. Both are generous, the first point and the second point, but the second one's more important to all of us in the room here. So traditionally, transportation funding requires that 80-20 match. We talk about that all the time, right? 80% federal, 20% local. That's true about the planning funds as well. For all of the Indiana planning funds, the FHWA PL funds, and this other thing called Section 5303 funds, the transit funds, in Indiana, it requires that 20% match. In Kentucky, for those transit funds, Section 5303, that also requires a 20% match. KYTC has provided for many years a bit of a discount on that match. Instead of 80-20, it's always been 85-15, where 5% is covered by the state, 15% is covered by KIPTA, and we pay for that through the local dues that we get from your all's respective agencies. So at the urging, I guess I could say, or consultation with the MPO's directors from around the state, KYTC Central Office has offered to begin to start matching it at a 10% rate. So instead of 80-20 or 85-15, it's going to be 80-10-10. Why is that important? Well, because that means that's about $90,000 less that we need of our local dues that go to this agency at large will need to be applied to these to this local match. So the case that the MPOs across Kentucky have made, and I believe this wholeheartedly, is that for a relatively small investment by the state government, it's going to have an outsized impact because that lessens the burden on the local and regional governments levels. So again, so that's a big win, and hopefully it's here to stay. There's no reason to believe it's not, but I really wanted to harp on that today because that's a big deal. That's a big deal for us. So thank you to KYTC for the generosity. In Indiana, the funding decreased a little bit this year, but for those that were here last year, I pointed out that that fiscal 24 was the high watermark for a few reasons over there in Indiana, and so our fund and this reduction in 2026 was predicted at that time, and so it's not surprising. It wasn't surprising. I think it was a little bit less actually, the decrease, and so we're down by about $21,000. Some of that has to do with, it has two primary factors. One is, you heard me talk about over the last couple of years, the constriction or the contraction of the urbanized area boundary. Fewer people live in the urban area because the boundary shrunk, okay? And so that lowers the per capita amount. And also the formula used by NDOT or by the NDOT and other stakeholders kind of reconfigured the formula and it cost us a little bit as well. So again, what's important is it's still quite a bit higher than fiscal 22. NDOT had put some funds in there for a couple of years that weren't meant to be for the long haul. And so no cause for major alarm there. Thank you. Other highlights include, it continues to include our FRA corridor ID grant and our Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. The final version might not have that SS4A grant since we could be done by June 30th. That might change from draft to final version of the UPWP. Just like last year, or pretty close to last year, let's say, what's in here is approximately about $200,000 federal for something that Brady's going to talk about in more detail shortly, for planning studies. Remember, that's the funds that we kind of farm out and say, hey, does anybody need some of our PL funds or PL 5303 funds to do a local planning study? Like I said, we'll have more on that in a moment. It also, Indiana allows us to carry over our money. We always talk about how we can carry over our Kentucky capital dollars. Well, you can't carry over the planning dollars in Kentucky, and you can't carry over the capital dollars in Indiana, but you can carry over the planning dollars in Indiana. So we have about $170,000 on our books that we could carry over from Indiana. We can deploy that in a number of ways. But the NDOT annual contract with us allows for us to spend those funds over a period of 3 years. So it's not an urgent thing. So there's no harm in not spending it. In fact, due to local match reasons, there's maybe makes sense to spend what's proven it, not much more than that. Hold on, I've got a couple more important things on here. That next to bottom bullet, complete streets planning. 2020, I think it was like 2023. The feds, Federal Highways and Federal Transit, both said that if for complete streets planning activities, that those activities can go match free. Okay. In that same notice, they said you must confirm or assure that you're spending 2.5% of your efforts toward complete streets planning activities. I would contend we spend double digits percent, 10, 20, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to put a pure number on it, to be clear, but way more than 2.5. At that time, it was believed that 2.5 was the cap on what we could get as match-free money. But there was clarity that was put out last year in 2024 that said, no, that's not the cap. The cap it can be higher. And so this is a new thing this year. And I don't know that other MPOs are going to be doing a whole lot of this, but since we get the largest share in Kentucky, we're incentivized more than others perhaps to try this because it can save us the most money. And we want to showcase the complete streets planning that we're doing, all those things. So what we've done, we've created a new work element that staff will bill their time to. Starting out kind of small, we'll see where it goes, see if we're billing a lot. If so, it'll be encompassed by other work elements this year, and maybe we'll adjust next year. But again, that's limiting that match burden for MPO activities, allowing that local match to go toward other activities at KIPTA as an agency, or to just be prudent with our dollars more generally. And then last but not least, the uncertainties. With all the let's say changes going on with the new administration in Washington, there are several instances in this work program, just as I've been preparing it over the last week or week plus, where we've just removed some things because we've learned that those types of terms even or activities should be stricken from a work program, just like they will be stricken from our TIP. These include things surrounding things like the environmental justice activities. Those are taboo all of a sudden. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but nonetheless, there's some uncertainties there. I don't know that there's a whole lot of uncertainties on the funding, let's say, because these are mostly formula funds. So I don't have maybe there's cause for concern. I don't know, but on the verbiage of it, there are some uncertainties. What does that mean? That means that there's far more likely than usual to be some changes from this draft one I'll be submitting today or tomorrow to the one that I will bring for your all's approval in April. I think we'll get some feedback from federal government to say, hey, you can't say that anymore, or where'd that go? Even though you're not allowed to say it that way, you should say it this way, or something like that. We'll see. So we're going to dance around it. in many cases, we will be continuing to do the same activities, providing the same services, but we'll call it something else. Greenhouse gas emissions reductions will become emissions reductions. Let's start there or something like that. So again, I don't think there's major cost for a lot there, but we'll see. You never know. New world. Action is requested. However, since I have not provided you guys the proper review time, and I apologize for doing that, I don't know that action is required. So what I mean by that is, if you all would like to approve this, that's fine, that's great. But if you would like time to review it, and when I submit it to the states and feds, I won't put that the TPC approved it. And that will leave maybe the open door for us to individually, collectively to make more changes. Again, I think the changes for this reason, and because of those uncertainties, there'll be more changes from draft to final than ever. So if we can leave it as is, I'll submit it as is. We'll see what the feds say. We'll see what the states say. We'll see what you all say. And then we'll put that together over the next 30 to 45 days and get it ready for approval in April. So I can go, I'm happy to take that either way. So it'll be up to you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions about what's in that document as well.
Can we approve to move forward in the review process?
Yeah,
We can, yeah.
of course.
Make
Yeah,
motion to approve to move forward with the review process, because there will be further review, so we have to review it one more time anyway.
Yes. Yes, it'll be out in the open, and I will send emails and or updates in March to you all at this meeting in March. And then with hopes of getting it all, or not with hopes, with we'll have in late April, we'll have the final, and I'll cover in depth. Hey, remember what I talked in February about? Here's what I've changed since then. That's how I'll do that. Or that's all I'll be happy to do.
So to make it official, do we want to have a motion then to approve the review process?
That can be fine.
I can make a motion.
Okay, we'll make that motion then to approve the review process.
To, yes, the PPC approves the draft to move forward with the review process.
Okay,
Thank you.
understandable. By second,
I'll second.
second. Any other questions? Anybody have any other questions to clarify anything? If none, all those in favor of approving the review process signify the same aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item up there on our agenda is call for projects, and it's the recommendations. And Greg, you got that?
No, Brady.
Brady, I'm sorry. So this is what we have.
So this has been a long process, call projects. This go around was first announced in June. We had applications open in August of 2024. The TTCC working group met 3 times, twice in December, once in January, before coming to a recommendation that went forth to the TTCC a couple of weeks ago that the TTCC did recommend approval of the presentation and the programming recommendation I'm going to present to you today. This is the final step for this round of the call for projects is TPC approval on these recommendations. Or adjustments as you may see there. There's a summary of the call for projects information in your packets. There's also a link and a QR code in your packets that take you to a more detailed representation of what these requests are. So you can feel free to look there, or you can use this QR code that I'm presenting here to see more details about these projects.
Make sure I got this right. So this is basically a resolution.
No. We're still on set. We're still on set.
We're still
Yeah,
set.
yes, we're good. Yeah, these are separate.
I want to check.
These are both 8. We're good.
Okay. So this is an action requested.
He's got some more. information.
Yes, sorry, I was just pausing for a minute so people had a chance for the
Okay.
QR code for a second. And then I'm gonna run through kind of a summary of this, these presentations here. So as a reminder, Kentucky Call for Projects is going to start in Kentucky first and then go to Indiana. There were 41 total applications totaling $173 million worth of requested funds for Kentucky and existing and new projects. There was only about $55 million that was available to program between the three Kentucky funding sources, the SCBG program, CRP program, and TA program. So as you can see, there are projects requested that are not able to be accounted for in recommendations. So this TTCC working group that met 3 times, they considered a few different strategies for how to prioritize the projects and kind of landed upon a finish what you start approach. And most of the funding recommendations that you'll see today go towards existing MPO dedicated projects that have already gone through this process before to receive funding that now need additional funding or shifts in their schedules or things like that. Most of the funding recommendations go to that. Small amount is going to new projects. Projects that had the highest average working group ranking were prioritized. The working group ranked all projects that were given based on a variety of different factors, public comment, MTP scores, that go back to directly to the MTP goals, the long range plan of KIPTA, among a variety of other factors, including internal project sponsor priority of which projects they prioritized of the ones they submitted, and a variety of other factors. Another note, the demand for funding in earlier fiscal years 25 through 27, was a lot higher than in later fiscal years, in fiscal years 28 through 29. So we had to make some adjustments with the schedules of projects to be able to make more room for money to be available early rather than later. So first with the TA program, these are the 3 projects that are recommended to receive additional TA funds. They are, we only received 3 applications for existing TA projects to receive funding. So this would be all of the projects being awarded that were TA projects. And that totals that $4 million number that you see there between the 3. When you look at the projected carryover balance of the TA program, this is what it looks like after those recommendations are implemented. The key years you're looking at here is fiscal year 27, where you can see the carryover balance is down to 0. That's assuming all the projects that have funds programmed get obligated on time by fiscal year 27. So if everything happens as the tracking sheet says it will, then we'll be at $0 for carryover in fiscal year 27, which keeps us fiscally constrained. And we don't really have anything programmed yet in fiscal years 28 and 29. So those numbers are just the summation of the sub-allocation of TA funds for 28 and 29. But once again, both in the black, so fiscally constrained. CRP recommendations. You can see 5 projects listed there recommended to receiving some CRP funds. That is all of the CRP requests that are existing projects were funded except for 2 that requested around $10 million each for construction phase. And there just isn't money available to fund those additional projects. But all the other projects that were existing that requested for funding, these are all metro projects in this case, have received funding, and you can see the total there on the screen. This is a CRP projected carryover balance. Once again, assuming those recommendations are approved. You can see we're slightly over programmed in fiscal year 25, perfectly reasonable, considering the kind of track record of obligating projects in recent years. 26 is fully programmed out. And if you go all the way down to fiscal year 29, we still have about $1 million unprogrammed in the CRP program. So once again, proof of being fiscally constrained. That moves us to the SPBG program in Kentucky, which is the highest demand program, it's the most flexible program. It also is the program with the most amount of money. And so there's a couple slides here of SPBG recommended projects. These projects come from a variety of different project sponsors in the KIPTA region. You can see on this slide, Louisville Metro, Oldham County, Jeffersontown, KYTC, and KIPTA's rideshare program as well as receiving funds. And then in the second slide here, also a planning study for Bullitt County and a TARP downtown Louisville Transit Center planning study That was mentioned previously, I believe, in one of the public comments. So those two projects I just mentioned, the Bullock County and the TARP project, are the only new projects on the Kentucky side that are recommended for additional funding. Both essentially are funding for planning stages at this point. To be considered for implementation funding at a future call for projects, perhaps. Other STBG project changes include these here: the Oldham County project that you see, the KY 22 project, and the Jefferson Town project, the Galen Drive project. Those are not, those projects aren't getting any additional funding. They're just having their schedule shifted back to later fiscal years. That allows more room for some of these other recommendations to occur in fiscal years 25 through 27. And there will be no punishment to these projects for moving back. So they kind of get a free phase shift by kind of allowing their peers to have money in earlier fiscal years. It's kind of the agreement that we reached with those two projects. Mount Washington project currently had some STBG funds, some TA funds, and some state funds. And the adjustment here is to essentially turn the TA funds into STBG funds. So the cost of the project hasn't increased. We're just, the proposal is to move the existing TA funds into the STBG pot instead for that historic multi-use trail segment C. And this is the STBG carryover balance. Once again, assuming all of these recommendations are implemented. So you may look at this and say, well, Brady, it looks like in fiscal year 27, you have a negative 13 million balance. Is that fiscally constrained? Is that a problem? And I'll talk about that in just a second. You will see in this example that there's still $4 million unprogrammed in fiscal year 29. Also to consider for each of these fiscal years, this number does not reflect the STBG cost increase reserve that is lopped off 20% from our sub allocation each fiscal year. So there's also additional money in the STBG program that's not accounted for in these numbers here. That will be available and could support some of these negative balances, but I'll talk more about why that $13 million number you see there would still be fiscally constrained. And that's because we actually have more money than we thought we did a few months ago. I noticed some potential discrepancies between KIP's tracking sheet and what I thought that we actually should have in our STBG balance or our carryover balance based on a variety of agreements that KIPTA has made to flex SLO or STBG dollars to KYTC for a dollar for dollar match, usually via the August redistribution process, where KYTC says, hey, KIPTA, you have a lot of money in your carryover balance. Can we please swap that with our state dollars or dollars we have access to be able to compete for outside funding? And those are agreements we've made since going back to like 2008. It was one of the earliest agreements that I was able to track down. And so after looking at the tracking sheet that we have and comparing it to our IOU balance from all of these agreements with KYTC, and then also cross-referencing all of that with how much actual STBG funding do we have in our federal reports that we receive from FHWA, how much money do we actually have? And the answer to that is we have about 18 million more STBG dollars than our tracking sheet said we had a few months ago. That discrepancy really comes down to whenever KIPTA implemented the cost increase reserve, where we lop off 20% from the sub allocation. There was an error in how that was tracked, and so that amount of money essentially hasn't been accounted for properly in the tracking sheet since 2020. And when you fix that, that number correlates right with the estimation from our KYTC IOU budget and what's in our STBG budget from FHWA. So all that to say, we have some more money than we thought we did. So if you include the additional funding of STBG dollars, the carryover balance goes from that to this. So the fiscal year 27 of just under $3 million as an over programming. We're talking about $156 million available in fiscal year 25, and the cost increase reserve that's currently about $4.5 million a year, that's perfectly reasonable. And actually leaves a good amount of money that we could still program to SDBG funds. So it was the recommendation from the working group and the TTCC to, instead of programming those additional funds now, to hold a separate call for projects later in 2025, to program the additions of newfound money for the STBG program. The reason for that being, seemed more fair to project sponsors in that we announced that we'd have $55 million available months ago. But if we had announced that we had $75 million available months ago, perhaps the applications might have been different from some project sponsors. So this also allows time for project sponsors to reevaluate your funding priorities. And we have received feedback from our Kentucky sponsors that they would like more regular call for projects anyways, so this would provide an opportunity for that. Also, the SS4A planning study for each of the participating parties should be completed by the time we do a 2025 call for projects, and so that might adjust project sponsors' priorities in a call for projects for the STBG program. Okay, a couple last notes for Kentucky. As mentioned, the Louisville Downtown Transit Center. The recommendation is to give some money for planning and design. The reason we didn't give any more money for that project is primarily because it's such at an early stage. The working group didn't feel comfortable giving upwards of $14 to $15 million per construction phase, and we're not 100% sure what the cost estimate would be for such a project. And it's just a big investment for KIPTA to make given our limited dollar amounts. So this is just something to keep in mind, is for the CRP program and the TA program, you can see the carryover balances at that fiscal year 29 add up to about $6 million. We get about $2.5 million in each of those respective programs each year. So if this is a project that KIPTA in the future wanted to prioritize, then we could potentially fund this project in fiscal year 30 or 31, and just through the CRP and TA programs have $10 to $15 million that we could put towards an implementation phase for this project without ever having to touch the STBG budget, which is much higher to me. But that would require not spending these funding sources on other things. Not something that you have to do, but just something to think about when we're going through this process in the future. Okay. Indiana, a lot more simple in this case. We had 10 applications totaling a request of $23 million, and we had about $20 million available, which is a much smaller gap than what we had in Kentucky. So as a result of that, all 10 projects that were requested were able to receive at least some level of their requested funding. So all the projects in white here are requested to be fully funded using the funding sources you can see in the column on the right. And then the 3 projects that are highlighted in green are projects that are partially funded. So the Memphis Blue Lick Road upgrade is just a planning phase to that project. And then there's a little bit of money to the downtown transit planning study that I just talked about. And then the Baylor Wiseman Hilltop Road is partially funded, a little bit overmatched by Fort County. And if you include all those in the Indiana carryover balances, which I guess they're not really carryover balances, they don't carry over, but in the fiscal year balances, this is what it looks like. So you can see that we're not in the red in any fiscal year, and we're fully programmed out in fiscal years 27, 28, and 30. Any questions for me about any of that? Otherwise, I'd be requesting action from the TPC to approve these recommendations. Thank you.
You want to talk about what happens to these projects next? Should they be approved versus a new tip?
Sure. So some of these projects will be able to be implemented via a administrative modification that will be occurring pretty soon, within the next week or so, right? And then some of these projects will have to wait to be implemented. Well, some of them will be included in the draft of the new tip that we're working on right now, that we're hoping to have a draft in to begin the public review process, environmental analysis process, within the next few weeks. But that won't be approved until later this summer, possibly June, maybe even later than that. And then some other projects, because they're currently pending Amendment 8, they already have changes that are pending. We'll have to wait until Amendment 1 of the new tip. So most of the projects that are timely and that they have money that needs to be spent right away or very soon, most of those are going to be included in the administrative modification that's happening soon anyways. But just for a timeline, some of them are going to be in different buckets for the getting into the tip.
Thank you very much. A lot of numbers there. This is item number 7 on our agenda. And so this is action requested here, so this is we need a motion to approve the recommended call for projects of those recommendations. I have any questions?
So,
Motion,
Second.
we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on our agenda. This is Amendment 8 to the fiscal year 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program and connecting Kentucky and the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. So, you got that, Chris?
Yes,
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
just gonna wait for Greg to pull up my presentation. Quick. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about Amendment 8. And it will be an action item. So we're working hard to move ahead to our next tip by early summer, as Brady mentioned. So this should be the last amendment to the current tip. This amendment includes numerous project updates requiring air quality conformity analysis. So what that means is that I'll ask for approval from the TPC today, but then there'll be the added need for federal conformity review and approval. So it'll be probably at least another month before it's finalized. The project updates vary between the 2 state transportation agencies and the LPAs and also TARP. It's got 69 projects in total, with the bulk of the updates needed after the release of the Kentucky 6-year plan. So there's going to be a little more on that. As a reminder, last month or maybe the last 2 months, we had administrative modifications that predominantly focused on KYTC updates due to resulting after the highway plan. And so what I'm going to have today is the amendment level changes that were needed after the highway plan. And more projects, like Greg was talking about earlier, we got more comments. Could be a variety of reasons why, but this one got a lot of attention. So thanks to Greg for the outreach. This one, excluding the comments, is 84 pages. So I have a QR code here. We didn't include it in the packet this time. I'll give you guys a minute if you want to pull it up. This is the largest amendment I've put together so far. And so I'll do my best to give the highlights to you all today. If there's any questions on specific projects that anyone wants to go over in more detail, just let me know about that. Also, if anyone has any questions regarding the types of updates that require amendments or the standard timeline for amendments, why they take 3 to 4 months, let me know and we can talk about that as well. Otherwise, I'm going to get right into the projects. So for this amendment in particular, we're at the end. We're going to ask for TPC action today. But as a reminder, back on February 12th, we presented it to the TTCC and they approved recommending approval by the TPC. Also, on that same day, we sent the public comments to the TPC, so you all should have gotten those at that time. All right, so the first 4 projects, and these do go in order of the amendment at that QR code, if anyone's following along. The first 4 updates are all laid out. I've got 2 new projects and 2 existing projects with TIP funding updates and some other minor changes. The next 6 projects are all Indiana LPA projects. They're all new projects. We've got 2 from Clark County, the County Route 311 Sellersburg improvements and the Memphis Blue Lick roadway improvements. Got 3 from Floyd County, the Bridge 38 replacement, Baylor Weissman Hilltop, and Highway 150 break Highlander Point. And then also 1 from New Albany, the Slate Run Road improvements, phase 2. Now I'll get into the KYTC project updates. These first few are some child parent project updates. So we're adding child projects to a few of the parent projects, and we have to make updates to the parent project to just align everything in the TIP and MTP. Parent projects are typically just in the MTP, and child projects are just in the TIP. So we've got a new project, new child project to KIP to ID 3067. And then we've got a new child project to 2919 and also to 2233. Next, I've got a bunch of new projects to be added to the TIP and MTP. Several of these are along US 31, which is Bardstown Road, US 31E. And some more new projects, including an additional child parent project. We're adding a new child to KIP to ID 2121. And some more new projects, and then I've got a couple of safety projects. And an operational access study. And I've got 13 projects, mainly with TIP funding updates. These are all just minor updates to existing projects. I want to note that a few of these are MTP projects that are just now entering the TIP because they have funding for the first time. And then I've also got some TIP projects that were previously listed as group projects, but they've exceeded the threshold of how much a total cost can be for a group project. So now they're entering the MTP and received that added level of review that amendments can offer. A lot of these that I was just speaking of that were group projects, there are a bunch of bridge projects along I-65. And then I've got some LPA projects in Kentucky. I've got 12 Louisville Metro projects to start with. And a few of these updates might appear minor with just simple phase shifts and open to public date updates. I wanted to note that sometimes when the open to public date shifts, it brings the project into a different analysis year for the modeling. And that's why, even though these seem like minor updates, they had to go into the amendment. If anyone has questions on that, I'd be happy to talk about that more later too. Also, Louisville Metro government is adding some MTP projects to the TIP for the first time and some new projects to the MTP only. Got some of those. And then lastly, I've got a new TARP project to purchase 3 electric buses with 5339 funds and the last project I've got is a U of L project. At Museum Drive intersection. This one is a phase shift. Open to public date update. It fell into the air quality modeling leader group that I was discussing earlier, so that's why it ended up in the amendment. If anyone has any questions, I can take them now.
Our chairman had to step out of the room for a moment, just in light of time constraints to the meeting, are there any questions for Chris? Okay, so I guess I'll defer to our vice chairperson, Deputy Mayor George. Is it okay if I go ahead and administer this? Okay.
Yes.
So the way we typically do our amendments is to do two actions. The first action of which would be for our Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So this time, I'd like to seek a motion for the approval of Amendment 8 of the MTP.
Second.
A second? Any more discussion? All those in favor, please signify aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, in that case, we'll need to move on to our tip. So at this time, we'll seek a action on approval of our fiscal year 2023-2026 tip amendment 8. Seeking a motion and a second this time.
Motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving amendment 8 of the tip, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes as well. So the chairman's back in the room. Both the tip and the MTP were both approved. So we're good to go. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, next up is the performance management plan annual update. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. So just here to go over the PM1 update. That's our federally required performance measure about safety. We do this every year in February, and we update our 5 safety targets. Go ahead and get right into it. That was one down one thing. So I'm gonna go over the 2024 crash data for our region. I'm gonna go over the Kentucky and Indiana statewide safety targets and then take some questions at the end. Alrighty, so here you can see 5 bar charts. One for fatalities, fatality rate, serious injuries, serious injury rate, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And we have 2020 to 2024 up there. So you can see just about everything has been coming down except for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. There's been a pretty big decrease in the serious injury rate as well in the region. I think a lot of that has to do with the increase in VMT. We're kind of like back at the pre-COVID VMT levels, but it's also, I think, the actual numbers also come down. You can see right there on that purple bar on the fatality, I'm sorry, the serious injury rate. Or total number of serious injuries, sorry. The number of fatalities is decreasing as well, which is really good. We had 150 last year. It's down from 178, and you know the 2019 year has fallen off, but in 2019 and 19 was 128 and 18 was 124. So there's a huge jump in 2020. And it kind of stayed elevated. It decreased a little in 21, went back up 22, it went up again in 23, but a big drop off in 24. So that's really good. Once again, that rate has come way down. It had a huge increase in 2020 because of the huge drop in driving because of COVID. But all of those come down. And then once again, the serious injuries, can't remember 100% what it was in 2018 or 19, but you know, that has came down a lot from 2022, and it's kind of slowly trending down once again. But once again, that non-motorized, those have been going up since before COVID. They jumped up during 2020, and then they've continually increased. So we have here the serious injuries by county by year. Jefferson County increased a little bit from last year, but still a lot lower than that peak in 2022. Bullitt County decreased, Oldham County kind of stable, Clark County has slowly increased, but kind of stable for the last couple of years. And then Floyd County, kind of the same thing. You know, you saw like the biggest increase in Jefferson County before, and then that big drop last year. Here are the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, and you can see that Jefferson County is where the biggest increase in the region is for sure. It's been, you know, this is pretty much a nationwide trend that non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries are going up. Andy, I'm not sure if you know more about exactly why. I've heard a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they say the fleet mix could be one reason. There's a lot more people driving around massive, you know, SUVs and trucks. Those are the best selling vehicles in the United States right now, have been for a while. And a lot of companies don't even make cars like sedans anymore.
Yeah, it's also a bit of catch-22, you know, if we've got more exposure by people walking and biking more, it truly is more exposure. It's hard to deny that. And we wish that weren't the case. We wish that they bike and safe and walk on, and we're trying to make them as safe as we can, but you know, the more walkers and bikers, unfortunately, the more exposure that could be planned.
Yeah, it's hard to say because our statistically speaking, our region bikes and walks a lot less to like work, for example, than some cities, lower than the national average too. And so as we encourage it, we're gonna see that trend go up.
Yeah, this slide right here obviously proves how much of an urban phenomenon this is, right? That where is biking and pedestrians most prevalent? It's gonna be in Jefferson County. We all know that. But it's pretty stark, isn't it?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna ask, I mean, who's really delving into this? In terms of looking at, and it's 153, which is way too many, but enough to be able to maybe make some assessments.
I know, like, you know, the vision, we talk about it a lot, the Vision Zero, like the task force meetings. They track it, especially for ped crashes.
And on the, remember our SS4A activities, it is almost exclusively focused on fatalities and serious injuries. We're not ignoring the property damage only, but pretty darn close to it. Yeah, like those are fender benders, not gonna worry too much about them. But where are these happening? Where are they occurring with these non-motorized users? And so we're, you know, that analysis, that number crunching, the development of modern design strategies to help enhance the bike and pedestrian environment. That stuff that is going on at as higher rate or a higher level than ever in the KIPTA region. I'll stand behind that.
I mean, I know KYTC was doing the vulnerable road users assessments, correct? That would include these?
Yeah, there's focus from the feds on and by both states on vulnerable road user crashes, and so this is obviously not just KIPTA, you know, announcing this or calling this an issue. This is a nationwide trend, as Spencer alluded to, and the other nationwide trend is in general these other things are coming down, right? Just the vehicle on vehicle serious injuries. It's I'm not gonna say it's not a problem because it still is, of course it is, but it's not growing like this.
Having read, watching some of the police reports, it's supposed to be, what percentage of these accidents are happening outside of designated crosswalks or designated?
That number.
That's a good question. That's a good question. That gets to that exposure thing. Where are people walking, and do they have appropriate sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, etc., and they are not choosing not to use them?
Some of the reports I'm reading is like they're crossing not at an intersection, but just jumping across the road and causing it, which means maybe more common sense to cross the proper place, you know, or more means to try to get people to be safer.
It's true, and always there's going to be in this one that we'll find intoxicated individuals that are, you know, they're making some.
I just want to see any kind of report.
Yeah,
that shows.
I know in the SS4A stuff, they're looking at definitely looking at vulnerable road users. You know, they also are trying to exclude some of just the one-off things. Like I know when we met with St. Matthews, they were like, oh, we know what that one was. You know, it was this specific incident that involved a police chase or something. So it's kind of like, that's not a dangerous road per se. That was just a one-off thing. So they try to look at things that might not be, you know, because of the way that it's designed, but there's probably not a ton of that. It's,
Well, another assessment is the lighting conditions. Is it daylight? Is it dark but lit with streetlights? Is it dark but not lit? That's telling on some of these things too. And so some of those improvement strategies will be based on some of that data analysis.
I would say the majority of all of these are pedestrians. You know, there's the most bike would be in Jefferson County, but there's still not very many compared to the pedestrians.
Also too, some larger cities across the country, they're upgrading all their pedestrian type crosswalk areas and everything. I don't know, in Jefferson County and Louisville in particular, has there been much look at improving our crosswalk areas or, you know, upgrading to more specialized crossing areas, more pedestrian type buttons that can help control that? Because it seems like a lot of other big cities are, you know, they got pretty fancy equipment out there at their crossing stations, and would that help us to reduce some of that, some of the numbers also?
Yeah, I'd offer some of the improvements on Marshtown Road as a good example of that, where if nothing else, crossing distances are reduced.
Yeah.
How many feet does it take to get across that road? If that's shorter, well, the exposure is reduced.
Yeah,
It's not zero, but it's less.
A lot of looking at like speed management, because I think it's over 25 miles an hour. That's when you get like an exponential increase in serious injuries and fatalities for pedestrians. So like below 25, it's pretty low. And then like, you know, 30, it jumps up, 35 jumps up, you know, then it gets quickly, you know, gets to be where the likelihood of someone, you know, having a fatal or serious injury is really high. So some of it's been like an emphasis on speed management too. You know, like some communities, some of the smaller communities have tried to lower their speeds in like neighborhoods because people are speeding, putting in speed bumps, things like that. So
yeah,
looking at you know, especially those low cost strategies. All righty, so here are the fatalities by county by year. This has been on a downward trend. I think Andy said at TTCC, this is probably one of the first times in a while where like every county has been on a downward trend. Big drop in Jefferson County from last year, which was kind of a big jump. Bullitt County dropped, Oldham, Clark a little bit, and then Floyd County, you know, level.
Still not zero, but a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can build on it, and a few years from now, we'll say that 2024, wow, look how high 2024 was. Who knows?
Yep. And then here are, so for this year, we're doing something a little different. We are going to, for KIPTA's recommendation to the TTCC, and then they recommended it to you guys. We're going to be using the state's targets for our PM1 safety performance measures as opposed to developing our own. Here they are right here. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Andy, as far as.
So every year, for those who've been here around, it's either been me or Spencer or some other folks that have come to you with this presentation or similar one. And hopefully that first 2/3 of it was really interesting to look at the data. But every year we have the conversation about these targets that we set as a KIPTA region. We're the only MPO, I think, in Kentucky or Indiana that chooses that option. The other option is to support the states. We would like to continue to create our own if it meant something, because we have that same conversation every year of the targets that are prescribed to be set are 5-year rolling average targets that end in the year we were talking. So the 5-year rolling average, since we're correct me wrong, that we have to report right now would be 2021 through 2025. So the targets, hey, we're trying to improve, we're trying to get better in the future. The targets as prescribed by FHWA are 4 years in the past, 4 years and a month at this point. And then we're only looking forward 1 year. So we're never allowed to make some aspirational targets as we do through our MPO, or excuse me, our MTP performance management plan, which looks at 10 or 20 years out. And so this is a simpler way of doing it. There's zero difference, or we should expect zero difference in the emphasis and on safety in this region has never been higher through the Safe Streets and Roads for All, through Metro's Vision Zero efforts and others, that this indeed is a high priority. Brady, you mentioned it earlier, we've got that extra found money, so to speak, for our next call for projects. Perhaps that can be a strong focus in that. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it, to get to spend, to really focus on that in that call for project, call it a safety call, if you would. But so we'll see. But indeed, the recommendation is to just support the state's targets, which puts us on par with the rest of the state, the rest of the MDOs across our two states.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Spencer. This is an action item, it requires for action, so this is I entertain a motion to accept the performance management plan annual update. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Have a second? Any other questions or discussion? If none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, sir. Next item on our agenda, item number 10, is the KIPP staff will present the proposed schedule and requirements for the next call for studies. Great.
I'll keep this one pretty brief. So last year, we had PL funds that we were able to put towards 3 different planning studies in fiscal year 25. These funds have already been described to you by Andy. They're the same ones he was discussing, PL funds used in the UPWP, so I won't get into that specifically since he already did. But they are funds that require some level of match. And so these funds I'm talking about today they're going to be put forth for a study. Whoever is granted the funds, it does require a match from those.
Just to be clear, these will be for fiscal 26 funds that we'll be discussing on.
Yes. Fiscal 26 funds. So last year for fiscal 25, we had $200,000 available. It went to 3 projects. One of them was the University of Louisville Railroad study, and they just finished and presented that project at TTCC a couple weeks ago. And there's also a project in Clark County and a project in Floyd County that was awarded. Those studies are still ongoing. Similarly, we're expecting around $200,000 to be made available this year. I think the most recent estimate was around 185,000, perhaps a little more than that.
Yeah, remember that uncertainty I was talking about with that UPWP talk? Some of it depends on the final bills that we get from these fiscal 25 studies and otherwise to know how much we might have. But pretty darn close to this 200,000. It's a pretty safe assumption.
Gotcha. So that's about how much we're going to anticipate being able to put out for a call for studies for this fiscal year 26. In terms of the schedule for that, an application for the call for studies will open on March 3rd, which is Monday at TTCC. In a couple of weeks, I'll be able to come back to that group and provide a secure number. And this is actually how much is going to be made available to give you that information. And then the application window for this fiscal year 26 call for studies will end April 1st. So you got a month, pretty much all month of March to apply for your $200,000 PL funds. After that, staff will review those projects and present the recommendations to the TPC in April. And then pending TPC approval, we will work with the appropriate agencies to get contracts in place. Keep in mind that if you are awarded these funds, all planning activities must be completed by the end of fiscal year 26, which in this case will be June 30th, 2026. Also a good time for a reminder for the 2 studies that are currently ongoing that we provided funding for that in Floyd County and Clarksville. You have until June 2025 to make sure everything is completed for those studies. just as a reminder. And so that's the schedule. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. One more thing, the application can be found in the Kipton Transportation planning portal. It's the same place that the full and expedited project applications are on Kipton's website.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Brady. Move on to item number 11. And this is the administrative modifications. Fiscal year 2026 transportation improvement program. Chris, you have that for us.
Okay, so I've got two administrative modifications. Number 21 and 22, and these are included in the meeting packet. The updates were all submitted to KIPTA in the last month or so. TPC approval is not required for administrative modifications. This presentation is for your information only. Admin mod 21, we already submitted that one to NDOT. It's just one project in Indiana. We submitted that on February 10th. And admin mod 22 is going to be submitted sometime following today's one. I'm gonna skip over the qualifying criteria unless anyone has any questions on that. Usually the admin mods are for minor changes, which is why they aren't required to get approval. So this is basically a screenshot of administrative modification 21. This one was a Floyd County project, the replacement of Bridge 51. We just needed to add a little bit more funding to that one. Administrative modification 22 includes total of, I think, 23 updates that were discussed earlier in Brady's agenda item 7, coming out of the call for projects. He kind of already went into this. Some of the project updates that he discussed, they're in amendment 8 right now, so we can't do anything to them. And some of the projects are amendment level updates, and so we also couldn't do those through an administrative modification. But I took all the ones that we could, and they're in this administrative modification. You'll see in the meeting packet, it says pending approval. Well, you all approved that a few minutes ago, so we've got them ready to go in the admin mod now. These next two slides show a summary of those. I'm not going to go into too much detail because Brady already did for these projects. As you know, some of them are new projects, some of them are updates to existing projects. All of these based off of the call for projects and those decisions. And also he discussed 3 project updates that didn't require approval, but came out of the call for projects discussion. Those are here as well. Then after those, we've got a number of NDOT project updates. I think we have 9 NDOT project updates. They're mainly TIP funding updates, but they've also got 2 new group projects coming in. And finally, we have some KYTC project updates. Notably, we've got 2 new safety group projects for high friction resurfacing, one in Jefferson and one in Bullock County. And then also some TIP funding updates to KIPTA IDs 1922 and 2634. Then I've got a few Louisville Metro project updates. These here are, I think, the last of the project updates stemming from the 6-year plan updates. We've got those in this admin mod finally, and then we have 3 new transit group projects with 5339 funding. No action requested.
Anybody have any questions? None? Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, item number 12 is the KYTC shift. Hear about the shift process from Andy.
Yeah, I'll be real brief on this one, just to let everybody know that the every other year process that's called SHIFT, Strategic Highway Investment for Tomorrow, formula for tomorrow, is well underway. For those that have been around for a while, this is where we have to sponsor projects and then boost projects. So this is kind of an early heads up that in April, in order to meet the May 9th deadline, we will be sponsoring projects at the TPC meeting. And then later in the year, presumably in our August TPC meeting, we will be boosting the projects. And so there's going to be more information that we're going to be sending out very shortly about the shift process and how it'll be coordinated in our area, both by KIPTA and on some level in conjunction with KYTC District 5. One of the things we're looking to do this year, and it's tricky because of the legislators' schedules in Frankfurt, is to get as much early feedback from them as we possibly can. We always get the feedback, or we typically get the feedback, but sometimes it's well after the boosting, or excuse me, well after the sponsorship, and maybe even after some of the boosting is kind of determined a little bit. So what should be able to send out either tomorrow or early next week, that is an online mapping tool that KIPTA has developed that will show all the projects that are eligible for sponsorship. We've got it delineated by state house member districts and state senate districts, state senator districts. And so that'll be a way for us to interact with them, and it'll also be a tool through our interactions with you guys over the next few months, locally at the local level. Remember that the sponsorships, it's not a very deep cut. There's typically enough room to sponsor pretty much all the projects that we could expect to see in the highway plan or want to, but boosting the summertime step where we have to boost the projects, that's where it gets a little tight. There's never enough to go around. So more on that. Probably expect a slight update, a small update at least, if not a large update or an action item over the next maybe even 6 months of this to get us through the shift process too. And again, those that don't know, this is the building blocks for the next highway plan that'll come out in spring or so of 2026. So that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but be on the lookout for information from us very soon. And if you have conversations with our representatives from the KIPTA region that are in Frankfurt, our state house reps and our state senators, please do help spread the word, because we will be trying to seek some that feedback from them real soon.
But they'll also be getting an email.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the tool that we've developed so far, it's focused on them right now, but we'll use it for our purposes as well. When I say our, I mean the regional, the folks at the KIPTA table, traditionally at the KIPTA table. So again, that's just to enhance their input, because their input is important. It's critical. Remember, they have final say. The recommended highway plan from the transportation cabinet is recommended. The enacted one is one that they put together. Those what the General Assembly puts together in Frankfurt. So it's better to get the feedback sooner rather than later.
Okay. All right. Okay, Andy, thank you very much. We're going to skip item 13. We'll be bringing that up at our next meeting in March. So we're going to skip that due to time constraints. So be right on with the MBO director's report.
Yes, I've got a few items. One, just to note for those that are maybe watching this, probably know this by now. If we weren't able to live stream it today, but this will be Greg will put it. Greg is recording it. It'll be put up on our YouTube channel as if it was live. So we apologize for those that have watched it on a delayed basis, that we got it out there an hour and a half later or a couple hours later than we typically do. We'll get it. Assuming there's no technical difficulties, we'll get it back live next month. I want to recognize Tanya Hicken from Federal Highways Kentucky. She joined us during today's meeting. So hi, Tanya, how you doing? Just getting on there.
Hopefully I can come on here. Yes.
Hi there.
Hey, how are you all?
Yeah,
Thanks.
And right next to Tanya on our screen in the room, at least, is Mr. Isidro Delgado, so from KYTC Central Office. Thanks for joining us, Isidro. And then, last but certainly not least, I think you all will be happy to join, myself and Greg in recognizing our outgoing chair from 2024, Mayor Byron Chapman of Middletown, representing, the Jefferson County League of Cities on the TPC and on the board. And so we've got, Mayor Chapman. He's an old school guy, so we got him an old school Louisville Slugger, old school, just like the national, got a national, to recognize his service to the TPC over the past year and beyond. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
That concludes my MPO director.
Okay, let's see that. Any other business? Anybody have any other business they wish to bring up? With none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your attendance, and those who attended online, thank you very much.